In the early 1700s, a merchant vessel set sail into the North Atlantic and never returned. The ship was meant to reach colonial ports, carrying cargo and letters across the ocean. Somewhere between the waves and the fog, it vanished without sending a final message. No survivors. No wreckage. Only questions. The North Atlantic in the early 18th century was a place of risk and ambition. Merchant ships moved slowly across the cold waters, pushed forward by sails that depended entirely on the wind. Empires were expanding. Ports in Europe and the American colonies buzzed with trade, speculation, and rumor. But beyond the coastline, the sea remained unpredictable. It did not promise safe passage. It simply accepted those who crossed it. The ship at the center of this story was an ordinary vessel. It was not famous. It did not carry royalty or treasure. It transported goods, messages, and hopes of profit for those who invested in its journey. The captain had experience in these waters, having crossed the ocean several times before. His crew had been chosen for discipline and endurance. None of them expected glory. They expected work, hardship, and survival. Preparations began in a European port that faced the North Atlantic. Records from the time mention a vessel matching its description. It was sturdy but not new. The ropes had been replaced. The sails had been patched. Supplies were counted. Barrels of water. Dried food. Tools for repair. Navigation instruments that were precise for their era, but far from perfect. The people connected to the voyage came from different social layers. Wealthy merchants financed it. Dock laborers loaded cargo. Families watched from the shore as the ship prepared to leave. For some crew members, this voyage was routine. For others, it was their first major crossing. The tone was calm. There was no panic. No omen recorded in the journals that survived. The broader world around them was also in motion. Colonies were growing. Trade routes expanded deeper into the Atlantic. But weather patterns remained barely understood. Storm systems formed without warning. Ice drifted south without pattern. A ship could vanish in days. When the final preparations ended, the ship left port with little ceremony. Its departure was one of many that season. The sails caught the wind. The coastline slowly disappeared. Letters were left behind with promises of return and profit. The ship, like many before it, aimed for known routes used by experienced sailors. At the time, there was confidence in tradition. Captains trusted the charts they carried. They trusted physical signs in the sky and sea. They trusted that luck would hold, as it had in the past. Yet the Atlantic had its own history. A history of taking ships and leaving little trace. The voyage continued into colder water. The sky darkened. Winds shifted. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the story began to change. The ship moved deeper into the North Atlantic, where the waters grew rougher and the air colder. The crew followed routine duties. They repaired lines. Watched the horizon. Checked the sky for changes. Life on board had a rhythm. Work. Sleep. Short meals. Guard duty at night. The men trusted the captain, whose calm presence gave structure to the long crossing. Messages from this stage of the journey never reached the shore. But historians reconstruct events from comparable voyages. The crew likely encountered shifting winds that forced changes in direction. Clouds thickened overhead. The ocean surface darkened. Sails strained against the pressure. Every adjustment mattered, because navigation relied on fragile tools and human judgment. The North Atlantic could transform quickly. Fog rolled in silently. It erased distance and landmarks. The horizon dissolved. In that environment, even experienced sailors could become uncertain. A few degrees of error could send a ship far off course. And yet, ships still pressed onward, because stopping was impossible. Movement meant survival. As the days passed, the ship would have battled long swells rising from unseen storms. The wooden hull groaned. Barrels shifted. Crew members tied down anything that could move. Some men prayed quietly. Others focused on the physical tasks that kept fear at bay. They had all heard stories of vessels that disappeared. But the human mind resists imagining its own fate. There were choices to be made. Adjust the route? Hold position? Risk sailing into darker water? Captains in the 18th century faced these decisions with limited knowledge. Charts did not show underwater hazards in detail. Weather predictions did not exist. A wrong guess could mean disaster, but doing nothing could be just as dangerous. At some point, communication with the known world effectively ended. No later sightings were confirmed. No logs from other ships described meeting them. The vessel passed into the unrecorded spaces on the map. Only the waves remembered. The tension of those final days must have been profound. Supplies were finite. Repairs grew harder. Metal corroded. Wood weakened. If storms struck, they would have come with violent force, smashing into the hull and rigging. If ice appeared, it could tear through the ship's side. If the wind died, the ship could stall in bleak emptiness. Every option carried risk. And the ocean offered no guidance. Eventually, the ship stopped being a travel route and became a missing object. Merchants waited. Families waited. Another ship was expected to report a sighting, but none did. The longer the silence lasted, the more certain the outcome became. But certainty never brought answers. Only absence. The final phase of the voyage exists only in speculation, assembled from fragments of maritime history. There were no survivors. No journals washed ashore. No clear wreck discovered later. Yet the North Atlantic has a pattern, and within that pattern, historians can search for truth. One possibility is a sudden, violent storm. The 18th century North Atlantic was notorious for powerful systems that appeared rapidly. Winds could tear sails in minutes. Masts could splinter. Water could crash across the deck with crushing force. In those moments, order dissolved. Commands were shouted into the roar. Men clung to whatever they could hold. The ship became a fragile shell fighting an ocean without mercy. Another possibility is ice. In colder seasons, drifting ice posed an invisible threat. At night, or in dense fog, it could appear too late to avoid. A collision could rip open the hole below the waterline. Water would rush inward. Pumps would not keep up. A ship could sink in darkness, with little chance to send signals or launch boats through the chaos. A third scenario involves navigation error. A series of small miscalculations could accumulate. The ship might drift far north or too far west, missing expected landfalls. Supplies would run low. Fresh water would spoil. Crew morale would weaken. Illness could spread. Decisions would become desperate. In that environment, anything could happen. Whatever the cause, the ending was final. The Atlantic absorbed ship and crew alike. Wood broke apart. Iron sank. Personal belongings scattered into the depths. The cries of the men, if there were any at the end, vanished into wind and distance. Back on shore, uncertainty grew. Merchants eventually recorded the vessel as lost. Insurance claims were filed. Families faced the quiet terror of not knowing. Widows never received final words. Parents never learned where their sons died. Ports that once expected the ship's return gradually stopped watching the horizon. Rumors circulated. Some believed pirates attacked. Others claimed the ship defected to another colony. A few insisted it found an unknown island and built a settlement there. But no evidence emerged to support any version. Time advanced. Records faded. New voyages replaced old ones. Yet the absence remained. A gap in maritime history. A ship that left port and never arrived. For the men aboard, the climax was likely swift. The ocean does not permit long negotiations when disaster strikes. A storm surge. A final crack of timber. A moment of realization. Then silence. That silence extended outward. Across the water. Across the years. Across the archives where historians seek names and dates. There is no grave. No monument. Only the knowledge that a crew once existed. They sailed. They vanished. And their last moments belonged to the Atlantic alone. The ship never returned. The records ended without warning. Names stopped appearing in port documents. Cargo lists remained unfinished. Letters waited in distant harbors. No replies ever came. Families stood on shorelines and watched the horizon. At first, they expected delay. Weather. Repairs. A change of route. Something ordinary. Something survivable. Time passed. Seasons changed. The harbor grew busy again. Other ships arrived. Other voyages began. But this ship did not reappear. Quietly, the officials declared it lost. Merchants closed their books. Insurance papers were filed. Clerks wrote the final notations in steady, detached handwriting. Then they moved on to the next line of work. The next vessel. The next transaction. For the families, silence remained. There were no last words. No graves. No confirmations. Only absence. A place once filled by a living person now held nothing. A voice. A laugh. A familiar step on wooden floors. All gone. Only the memory stayed. And even that began to fade. Years passed. Witnesses died. Documents yellowed and disappeared into archives. New wars. New voyages. New tragedies replaced the old. History absorbed the loss without ceremony. The ship became a footnote. Then less than a footnote. Then nothing. The Atlantic kept its secret. The waves continued their work. Storms formed. Ice drifted. Other ships crossed the same waters. None could point to the exact place where it ended. There was no marker. No monument. Only water. Only sky. Eventually, the story dissolved. It slipped from conversation. It slipped from memory. The men who sailed that ship vanished not only from the world, but from the stories the world tells. The voyage ended in silence. And the silence remained. Thank you for watching. New historical stories are published regularly.